Right, as well as being fine artists, you're also campaigners, at least at the moment. And your current campaign is to save Kempton Park. Can you tell us a little bit about why you feel so strongly, especially, you're not sort of live near there or anything? Why are you compelled to save Kempton Park?
Well, I think for me, the one of the greatest things about racing is it's a country rural sport, basically, and racing is one of those rural activities that help protect green spaces. And as well as Kempton being London's track, if you like, it's also a very beautiful green space in London, and it's got the water there, and it's wildlife, swans, birds. It's something that belongs to London, and I think if they lose Kempton, apart from I know you've got Ascot and Sandown not far away, but Kempton is just 20 minutes from Clapham Junction, and that's special. I was horrified when I just could not believe that somebody in charge of racing could come up with the idea to close the main track in London, and it was madness to me. And I thought that we eventually come to a time where you have property developers wanting to buy up race courses and smaller race courses, but I didn't think those entrusted to protect racing would actually think of selling off one of its best assets. And that's
the history of the place as well. I mean, it's a special place for. I mean, we used to go up there and watch Desert Orchid. The statues are there. I think is he buried there as well? I think. So, the amount of history of the place, and to conceive to shut it down, I think it's not only it's terrible coming from the Jockey Club and those who run the Jockey Club. It's just a betrayal of racing and shows a failure on their part. I mean, if they can't market something to London that close, I think they have failed, and they need to rethink their whole strategy with racing in regards to London. And I just cannot believe that they were considering this for a quick buck that might be a short-term fix for a few years, but then once it's gone, it's gone. And I think that creeping into racing a lot over the last 10 years are people who do not believe in the sport, haven't got a passion for the sport, and they're just looking at things as figures, and that's surely no good for the future of racing.
Looking at it apart from sentimental value, I spent 9 years going to Kempton Park. There's nobody there. During the week, the all-weather racing, I know it's bread and butter, I know it's mainly to keep the betting shops open.
But that's
very poorly supported for national hunt racing as well, apart from the one big day.
But I think that's a failure of the sport, those in charge with promoting the sport. It's a massive failure on their part of not promoting it properly. They've got no idea how to promote the sport to ethnic minorities. My girlfriend, who's a fashion designer, she loves it. She's from Serbia, but she's in London. She didn't know about Kempton Park because there's no racing in the Evening Standard, there's no racing in the Metro. That's a massive tourist centre, London, so we're missing out on the tourist thing as well. But my girlfriend lives in Crystal Palace. I go in the local bookies in Crystal Palace. It's absolutely packed every single day with West Indians, Asian guys. The atmosphere is great. And I asked them, I said, why didn't you go to Kempton? And they said, well, it's expensive. We see the adverts for Sandown and Ascot, and it's always expensive. It's at Cheltenham or whatever on the tube, and they think of it's going to be 100 quid. I said, no, the kids go free. I said, it's about 20 quid. 20 quid is like a 12 quid on a weekday at Kempton. And since then, quite a few of them have been going, but it just needs to get the message out. Instead of hanging around in the bookies all day, come down to Kempton.
Do you think that because a lot of my previous guests have talked about the struggle with diversity with horse racing, Do you think that it is just a cost thing? Because if they can sit in the betting shop all day betting, they can surely afford 18 quid or whatever. Or do you think that racing needs to go further to try and make people of, ethnic-minded artists feel welcome?
I think
Yes.
they need to
I
do that.
think they do. We've taken quite a lot of people racing over the years, and they've got the like Bengali boys, Polish, Czechs, Russians.
And this time last year we had it's the rugby today, but this time last year there was a ladies' fashion day, so we put on a fashion show in the marquee. We had Bromby Gentleman's Outfit as sponsoring it, and it was a really nice day. And I got 12 models. One of whom was from I can't remember. It's between Japan, North Korea, and Russia, the very far east of Russia. And Sakhalin, is it? Yeah. She was from there, and she'd been in London 2-3 years, modelling and doing a degree. And she was so excited when I asked her. And this is a girl who's appeared in Vogue regularly, London Fashion Week regularly. She was so excited because she said, I thought when I came to England, I thought horse racing, and yet in London nobody goes, nobody talks about it, so I didn't have anybody to go with. And we need to be reaching out to people like that.
How would you do that?
Sorry?
How would you do that if you were given the task?
I would make sure that you've got the racing's much more active in terms of promoting things in central London. And I think
with schools as well, they need to do a lot more work with schools, and it's a big industry. It's crying out for staff as well. Stable lads, stable lassies. We need to recruit these people. It's not just the race goers.
Yep.
And so a lot of work needs to be done in schools, and we should be out there getting the young kids out riding somehow.
And it's also great. You've got the Ebony Pony Club, I think, in Brixton. That's fantastic. And you've got racing for schools. It shouldn't be just those few initiatives. This should be, done at the top level. They need to get racing into schools. It's a massive industry. And most teachers in schools probably don't touch it because they think, well, bet in. Well, you can bet on football, but there's nobody trying to block football from being in schools. I'm not that interested in betting. It's the spectacle, it's the industry, the breeding. It's very cerebral, horse racing, and
the amount of different people you meet, and all with a common bond, really. Once it's in your blood, it's in your blood. I think everyone who comes racing agrees with that. We just need to be reaching out earlier, younger to people. I think racing's missed a generation.
I think it has.
Totally.
And I think it's not being on mainstream TV is a problem.
Yeah.
Because the same thing, and people think, oh well, young people, they're more sort of animal rights or obedient. That's rubbish. What it is, I think, because if you look at Speedway was a massive sport in the 50s, 60s, 70s. It went to Sky, disappeared off the radar for everyone. Doesn't appear, you don't get the results in the papers anymore. Nobody knows about Speedway. And horse racing will go that way. They have to get it back in the Evening Standard. They have to get some, even if the coverage is on the racing TV, and I do get that, it's money and everything, but they need to be saying to BBC for the news. We watched the sport on the news this morning. There's all these sort of minor sports. I'm going to get killed for this, but ladies football, which is all right. It's all very well. Have it, yeah. But horse racing is a huge sport, and it needs to be present in that little slot when BBC do their breakfast time sports reporting. For racing not to be in that is disgraceful, and I don't know whose fault's that. Whether it's some kind of prejudice at the BBC, or whether it's a lack of push from those in charge to promote it. And say, hey, come on, you're not representing second or third biggest spectator sport in Britain here. What's going on?
So you think that rather than just wave the white flag in Save Kempton, the Jockey Club should invest some money, see what they can do to get people actually going there, and then do their figures again.
And also, since starting this campaign, we've got quite a lot of people in the group now that the local people and the realisation of how that green space is such an important part of their lives. it's not just the horse racing industry. It's very important as greenbelt land as well.
And I think that's another problem we touched on there. You might say, well, why don't the locals support Kempton more? I don't think racing generally is reaching out to the communities enough.
No.
Years ago, we'd go to Wincanton, a Wincanton race day. It was half-day closing, so everybody in the shops, the butcher, whatever candlestick maker, they'd be all closing up their shops. Midday, go racing. Same in Chepstow. I don't know if there's any kind of liaison like that anymore with the local communities and with Kempton.
I think there's all sorts you could do. You could offer discounts to people who produce their council tax forms. They live in the locality. To be, there's just not enough work done with local councils as well. They're usually at, the racecourse and the council are usually at opposite ends of things, and more needs to be done to work together, more coalitions.
And I think with Kempton, it's not just the local. You've got London. You've got 12 million people, and they can't get the crowds. Well, somebody wants shooting at the top. They can't do that. I mean, for example, you've got London Fashion Week this week. If I had a London racecourse, I'd be thinking, right, what can we do with them? Let's reach out to the people organising London fashion. Can we have some parties here? Can we have some shows here? What's wrong with that? Why aren't they doing that?
You're talking quite strongly there about the powers that be, but at the moment I think nobody would really argue that it's not even one meeting, it's one race that people go to Kempton Park for 20,000 people turn up there once a year. Would it not guarantee because Sandown is in a very, very rich area, Esher. I mean, that land would be worth a fortune in comparison to Kempton. Would it not at least safeguard Sandown if the King George's moved there and they sold Kempton to Barrett Homes, whoever it is wants to buy it? And the heritage of the race would still carry on like the Lincoln has.
I don't think so. It's the King George, the ground, the track throws up different results to what Sandown would. You'd have much deeper ground. I think the big mistake was the all-weather. I think the powers that be thought that if they had regular race days and nights, people in London would know those race days and nights like the dog tracks. But there's no dog tracks left, is there?
And but there were. You go back to Walthamstow Dogs. It was absolutely buzzing of an evening. They had a nightclub next door. If you paid to go into Dogs, you got into the nightclub free, which was quite an expensive nightclub. They used to do that at Easthill Stadium with the Speedway as well. They had a nightclub
I think that's another thing racecourses learn through. If you have a membership of a club, why not have a club on site, like a sports club or like a cons club or a workingmen's club. Make it a race goers, so the locals get involved, and there's other things going on at the race course, not just weddings or exhibitions, but actual community things.
It's bubbled under the radar a bit recently. It's sort of disappeared a bit. If it comes back and it looks like solid plans, they're going to flog it. How active are you guys going to be with your group? Well, and can people that feel strongly as you do get hold of you and sort of join and put ideas towards you?
We're on Facebook. You just look up the Save Kempton Park campaign or Twitter.
And on Twitter as well. There's thousands of followers, and it's all gone very quiet. And no one at the top has ever, answered any of our questions or anybody else's questions, the locals, and I think they're hoping it's sneaked under the radar, but I assure you that none of us are going to allow it to
no. We're just waiting.
Go quietly.
The ball's in their court. They know we exist. They totally ignored us. We have trainers. We have a lot of trainers, jockeys, owners supporting us. They're frightened to put their heads above the parapet at the moment. I know Nicky Henderson's been very vocal, and other people, and I think they've mentioned that Kempton, what we were talking about earlier, that Kempton is a specific course. When they moved the rehearsal chase from Chepstow to Newcastle, it wasn't the same. Nobody knows rehearsal chase anymore, and I think that's what will happen to the King George. It'll just become another race.
Are Kempton themselves supporting you? Or the management at Kempton Park supporting you? Or are they? I realise they're also Jockey Club. They are Jockey Club, but
there's quite a few people who do not want to be identified, and that says something in its own right. And there have been a few cases of bullying within the group by people expressing their opinions. Again, not mentioning names, but
okay. So just a final word then to the Jockey Club, if they're watching. Hopefully they do watch it occasionally. What would you say to them briefly about Kempton Park?
I say, don't close it. Don't even think about closing it. There's no point selling the family silver, and get active on marketing it and making it work.
And to do that, you've got to believe in the product. And
if you don't believe in the product, step down.
Step down.